Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRNAM for Monday, April 10th, 2023. And our top story today, people analytics, gathering data to have a more productive workforce. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Chris Moore and Dave Seligsohn from ZeroedIn. Chris, Dave, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good to be here.
Yeah, likewise.
It's a pleasure. And today we're talking about people analytics. And Chris, we featured you on the program, on the show before, talking about this and the power of ZeroedIn. And Dave, it's a pleasure to meet you. Dave, I want to start with you. How important is people analytics and data to HR managers, CFOs in the C-suite today?
For me, it's essentially important. It's foundational in terms of understanding the business. Understanding what happened, understanding the causes for why things happened, being able to predict what's going to happen next, and then what we kind of think of as the highest level or prescriptive analytics, which is being able to change what's going to happen next, really all layers onto the foundation of having good and solid data in the first place. And so there's kind of this progression or building model, if you think of it that way, of creating a foundation of solid and trustworthy data, because you have to be able to first understand what's going on in your business before you can start to make decisions. I think go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought. I interrupted you. My apologies.
That's okay. I was going to say, I think in today's environment, we have to get the most out of people more now than ever before. The retirements, the changes of jobs, people taking on fractional roles, all kinds of job changes and whatnot. And so to maximize the use of every resource that we have, we need to understand what is happening within our business and for our people now more than ever.
And Chris, I want to come to you. Thanks for that, David. I want to come to you. Again, my apologies for interrupting you. Sometimes it's hard to see when someone is done because there's no body language. But Chris, I want to come to you because there's really this life cycle, and you've talked about this before. When people think about, when HR managers and executives think about their human capital, their human resources, their employees, there's this life cycle that exists. It's very circular from the hiring to the retiring.
Exactly, and many points in between. So as you mentioned, it's cradle to grave here, right? In terms of the workforce, it starts with really introducing the company as a potential place to work, hiring that individual, attracting them, hiring them, onboarding them, retaining them, and then really engaging them to achieve optimal performance. And that engagement really takes on a variety of efforts behind the scenes, whether it's learning and development, whether it's coaching, moving the individual around to, in terms of promotions, demotions, laterals, to ensure they're in the right role so that they can actually perform for the organization. And organizations measure performance. That's kind of the soft side, if you will, of how things get done. And then there's the productivity, which is what gets done. So that all leads into other areas such as how does the organization or how does that individual succeed in the organization? Do they move up in the ranks, or do they decide to ultimately separate at some point? So it is quite a life cycle that employees move through the organization. And as a result of that, the organization has many levers that they can pull to achieve that optimal performance and ideal level of productivity. So that ties into benefits, 401ks, health benefits, and the like, to ensure that the employee has the best experience. Employee experience today for organizations is a major focus point, particularly with younger generations coming into the workforce, working from home, working remotely. They're looking at ways that they can feel successful even when they're out on an island, so to speak. And it's the employer's job to make that happen and bring all those pieces together.
Yeah, and Dave, I want to pivot back to you because I remember a time when I first started my career, and I think Chris alluded to this, it was very qualitative. When Jeff Snyder was evaluated in my job early on in operations, there was a transactional element, but it was very qualitative. It was like, okay, it was 0 to 5 or 1 to 5. How did Jeff do in these areas? But now with the data, you can actually look at how people are doing and see, are they productive? And are they productive, by the way, in the roles that they have? Or to Chris's point, let's move them around to a place, maybe it's a manufacturing role, or maybe it's a client service role or a client-facing role.
Yeah, the analogy that comes to my mind is sort of the baseball Moneyball. Back in the day, you had people that would just pass the eye test. The scouts would go out, they would find someone that had the right size, they had the right tools, they looked good, and so they signed them, and they hoped that they, grew up in the organization and starred for the pro team. Then all of a sudden, you had Moneyball, and so you had a couple teams that focused on strictly analytics, and so they just cared about the amount of times you got on base. And hiring and bringing in players that were lower cost, that had right analytics that fit the view of the team, the strategy and the goals of that team's organization. I really think the best is the merging of both of those. I don't think that we can ignore the eye test. I don't think that we can ignore our gut and what we understand and what managers say and feel in that feedback. But at the same time, when we can support what we feel intrinsically with hard data, with performance measures, with higher revenue, and at the end of the day, our goal is to draw a straight line for what's happening to people and the changes and the decisions we're making to actual business results. And so are we able to track and know that, for example, if I train somebody or I promote them or I move them from one part of the organization to the other, how do I know that that was the right move? And so what are the measures and pieces of data that we need to track and implement, whether it's survey for qualitative data or actual performance scores or sales performance or customer success ratings? Those are all pieces that help us to combine the qualitative and the quantitative.
Thanks, David. And go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and what David said is spot on, but it doesn't come naturally in the workplace. Employers have to really go out and put a team together to extract the data from the various systems that they're using to manage their workforce, and there are many systems in place. It's rare that a company has just one HR system of, yes, one HR system of record, but one system that manages that entire employee life cycle that I spoke of. So there's a lot of work that goes into it to create data standards, to create efficiencies, and really make this a sustainable process to produce a single point of truth from which that analysis and insights and decision-making can take advantage of.
Yeah, and last question before we go to a commercial break. I'm sorry, but we got to pay the bills. We all know how that is. But Chris, I want to come to you first, and then we'll get David's response. How far along are organizations? You guys are working directly with companies of all sizes, but how far along are organizations today in leveraging data, combining data, leveraging data, and then using it as we're describing it in this conversation?
Well, historically, larger companies and really companies of all sizes have been using data, but in various parts of the business. Clearly in marketing, clearly in manufacturing. HR has been somewhat of a late adopter, primarily because of their relationship with the IT department. IT is very busy focusing on the parts of the business that really, generate revenues, right? Whereas HR has been traditionally focused as a cost center, they haven't gotten the focus there. Now, that said, a lot of organizations say, "Hey, our people are our greatest asset." Well, let's put our money where our mouth is, and we're starting to see that. And HR has been starting to leverage data, and they're building some of their own, HR analyst, people analytics teams. But you're right, there's a level of maturity that they go through. It starts with just, collecting data, doing standard reporting, ad hoc reporting, looking at trends, and then, their vision, because of where data analytics is going today, is in being able to forecast, being able to correlate, to actually predict and, identify cause. So, if we have this mantra at ZeroedIn, what gets measured gets funded. So you have to be able to measure, and you have to understand what is the impact, what are the levers that can be pulled in order to cause change, right? So if you could do the root cause analysis, you can then build a business case for change. A lot of decisions are made on gut instinct, but that's changing very, very quickly in the workforce.
And David, I want to take a very quick break. I want you to think about that. I want to get your answer when we come back. When we come back, we're going to talk about data pipelines and data reliability. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Invesco's latest Show Me the Income study reflects on the evolving retirement industry today as it faces the pressing need to help participants turn their defined contribution plan savings into long-term retirement income. Key findings from the research uncover that nearly 7 in 10 participants fear running out of money in retirement, and only 22% were very confident they could create a retirement income strategy on their own. What can employers do to help? To learn more about the study and request the white paper, visit Invesco.com/retirement income or contact your Invesco DC professional. Cited research is based on Invesco's work with Greenwald Research. Invesco is not affiliated with Greenwald Research. Invesco Advisors, Inc. is an investment advisor that provides investment advisory and does not sell securities. Invesco Distributors, Inc. is the U.S. distributor for Invesco's retail products and private placements. Both are indirect, wholly owned subsidiaries of Invesco Limited.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
Well, Chris, Dave, thanks so much for sticking around with us for segment number 2 this morning.
You bet. It's our pleasure.
And Dave, by the way, I love that movie, Moneyball. Jonah Hill, Brad Pitt were great in that movie, and it really kind of encapsulates the story there. It's obviously based on a book and a theory, not a theory, something put into practice. But Dave, just to pick up on the conversation you went before the commercial break, how far along are employers with doing what you and Chris and ZeroedIn are doing, which is capturing data, using the data to make analytical decisions, and to refine and improve the productivity of the workforce?
So for me, the answer is that they're not very far at all. That the issues are that they haven't really thought through a strategy. And I like what you just said about the movie Moneyball, because there's a theory. Like, it had to start with somebody thinking, if we do A, then B will happen. If we get the right players with the right measurements, we'll win games. That was their hypothesis. And so I think businesses don't always start with a hypothesis. They basically just look at the data elements that they have. They kind of push them together in whatever manual way that they're able to do that. And they try to see what it tells them. But the issue is it's not trustworthy, because trying to get data from disparate systems, as Chris talked about, that's hard because it doesn't talk to one another. There's a lot of manual intervention. And so the data and what it tells them isn't sort of put into a context of what they're trying to achieve as a company. And so for us, we believe that having trustworthy data is the first step to elevating HR's voice inside the business. So we can have trustworthy HR data that can create confidence in the decisions that they're making. Then when they stand before the board with the IT, before leadership, and they say, these are the initiatives we want you to fund, they have data to back it up, and it's trustworthy data. Now all of a sudden they have a seat at the table where they didn't have one before.
So Chris, to Dave's point, and how do you build that data pipeline? Because you both have talked about the interconnectivity of all these systems. By the way, some of these systems may still run on COBOL. Yeah, there may be some SQL or VBA calls, right, and things like that, some Java or API calls, but they may be older systems layered on top of each other. How do you build? If I'm watching the show and I'm an employer and I'm saying, I love what Chris and Dave are saying, and Jeff, by the way, they always love what I'm saying. But how do you build? I'm kidding. How do you build that pipeline of data?
Hey, Jeff, before he answers, can I give a little intro to that? I just have a high level thing that I think might really be good for your listeners. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is a data pipeline is just a process for moving data from point A to point B. And so having somebody write something on a piece of paper, walking it 3 floors down and handing it to another is still kind of a data pipeline in a way. And so we have multiple systems, multiple ways of collecting data, and you have things that are in system and automated, and then out of system where they're manual. And so, the data pipeline can be optimized and it can be automated and we can create accuracy, but a data pipeline is really just a process. So I just wanted to set the stage for people to understand that what is a data pipeline? It's the process of moving all this information into a place where it becomes useful. And Chris can give you the examples of how that's built.
Yeah, Chris, let's talk about that, because if it's manual, not manual, man, if it's manual in today's day, that's 2023. I mean, but that still exists.
Well, we try to help clients automate that data pipeline, but it really starts with asking the question, what's important to you and what are you trying to answer? Where are your challenges? We at ZeroedIn, we take clients through a workshop that focuses on some of those areas at that level so that we can really begin to drill down and understand what data is required to answer those questions. And then ultimately that data is stored in various systems. In the world of HR, it might be Ultimate Kronos, maybe it's Oracle or ZeroedIn or Workday or ADP. It might be, and in various systems from HR to talent to benefits to applicant tracking, and bringing that all together into a data lake where the data can be transformed, where it can be cleaned, reclassified where needed, extended. One of the most important things that we do in our data pipeline is we effective date the data. That gives us the ability to go back and forth at any point in time to say, what happened at a particular point. That's descriptive analytics. But that begins to evolve into the higher end of analytics, which is why did it happen, what could happen, and how can we make it happen? So it really starts with understanding the business as well. Dave, you want to talk a little bit about that the workshop that might add some clarity?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is once you understand what's happening, the data shows you like gaps are going to evolve. And so the business has to decide what gaps they think that again, it's a hypothesis. What are the gaps that if we address that, it's going to have the biggest impact on our business? And so we work backwards from that end. We want to improve our retention. We think that's the biggest issue facing our business right now. And if we fix that, if we improved our retention rates, it would have a huge impact on our bottom line operating revenue and net profits, for example. And so as we think about what are all the questions that we need to be able to answer that are tied to retention rates? Why are people leaving? How are they being hired? What's the average tenure? There's 1,000 questions. We need to think that every question set has data that's a part of that. And so when you think about why are people leaving, there's data collection that's a part of that, and there's multiple fields. And so if we start with the end in mind and the business has a strategy for what it wants to address, we understand the question and the key data pieces, then we can build a model that says this is how you're going to go track that, how you're going to hold people accountable to it and measure it over time. And so it really does start with, I'm a former educator, 15 years, teacher, principal, the whole 9 yards. And there's a big mantra in education, which is begin with the end in mind. And so we want to start with the outcome, work our way back into the specific data pieces. That helps us understand the right pipeline to build to get pieces from A to B, and also helps us to answer the right question and to track that and to test out our hypothesis for improvement.
And Dave, I think you'd be a very fun principal, by the way. Chris, I've got about 2 minutes left, and I want to ask you, if for HR managers, executives watching the program, how do you make the pitch? So, these are kind of lean times, meaning, we've got uncertainty in terms of the economy. You guys made the point that everyone always is focusing on how do I get revenue in the door. How do you make the pitch? So if I'm going into a board meeting, maybe at the end of the month, I want to pitch something like this. What's the pitch?
Honestly, it's a pretty easy business case. And so the answer to the pitch is really 2 words. So what? We have to say, if you fund this and we make this change in our business, what's the anticipated impact on our bottom line revenue, or on reduction of safety incidents, or on better audit results, whatever the outcome is. And so it's drawing that straight line from the changes around people to the actual business outcomes. And when you find that you train and develop people more effectively, then you have better retention of customers, you have more customers, you have more repeat buys, you have a lot of different very measurable outcomes. And it almost always, in every case, creates a really strong and viable business case, because the impact that you can have by doing a better job throughout that entire employee life cycle to bring things back around at any stage where you're falling short, to be able to improve that employee life cycle is going to have tangible outcomes for the business. Historically, the HR group could never draw that straight line. They didn't have the capability of doing that. Now, through things like developing an analytic strategy, building out a pipeline, and having the expertise to be able to provide and support and drive information to the people that need it most, we can now actually see the direct line and causation from things that we do around HR to improve business results.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And I want to get into this more maybe in a future episode. And I want to ask, in the future, I want to ask about how the pandemic maybe has reshaped some of this thinking. Really important. Dave, Chris, always a pleasure talking with you, gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here, and give your hairstylist all my compliments.
Thank you. Hey, I've been working on it. Good talking to you. Thank you.
Take care.
And that wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, or visit our website and, of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.